Stephen, we have gone from witness protection over 6 weeks of nobody having any idea where we were, what we were doing, to 2 shows here over the course of the last 48 hours. It's nice. It's nice to see you again. What's going on?
And I don't think we're live. I think we did this correctly. We thought we were recording it on Tuesday to go live at 6 p.m., but we were live in front of the nation and ready to go. Now I think we did this the right way, but it's nice to see you, Kyle.
Yeah, and upon further review, it seems as if 10 a.m. on a Tuesday morning on the East Coast seems like the most perfect, ideal time for us to be live to spread the news about Marlins baseball. That was terrific.
I got to be honest, 180 viewers. I was like, you know what? We didn't even announce this. If we actually do some organization around this, we could bump this thing to 2+.
That was 180. More people than I expected would be joining us when we unexpectedly went live to the masses. So, hey, good to see you again. We've got a great show for you here this evening. I'm very excited. And we talked about, we wanted to kick off the Hot Stove Show season on Tuesday with a press conference announcing that Clayton McCullough, 17th manager. We heard from Marlins principal owner Bruce Sherman. We heard comments from Peter Bendix. We saw the entirety of the press conference. And what we said on Tuesday and what we're looking to do, and we're kicking that off tonight, is with the Miami Marlins' newest director of pitching. This is a position that has not been fulfilled before. This is going to be a very important one to the organization. And Bill Hezel is joining us tonight. We're going to get to him momentarily, but this is an exciting show, I think, Stephen.
It is, and I think for people that don't realize the director of pitching is now becoming a little bit of a trend now in baseball. Not every team has one. I mean, I remember when we were talking about, the Marlins are going to get a director of pitching. Even I was like a little puzzled, like teams have that, but they do. The Red Sox, the Dodgers, you see teams around the league sort of adapt and create a position for such an important role. This isn't just at the major league level. This is across all the systems and really implementing a philosophy and core values. And I think it's really important because you only can do so much as like a pitching coach in each system. So to have a director of pitching is a big deal, and I'm super excited, man. This guy is innovative. He's young. He has good energy, and I'm really excited to listen to his story and really share with Marlins Nation what they're getting in Bill.
And what's fascinating is that we're obviously in a day and age where you need to marry analytics, gut feel, baseball, wisdom, knowledge, all into one. That's difficult to do. Bill's been able to do it. He comes to Miami via the Los Angeles Angels subsequently, and prior to that, Driveline. We're going to get into all of that. And before Bill hops on here tonight, I wanted to remind everybody that you can make sure, get yourself involved within the organization, get yourself a Marlins membership. I know we chatted about this a little bit on Tuesday, but it really is fan-friendly. It is affordable. We hope everybody comes out to the ballpark. Just get yourself involved. You see there actually on the ticker on the bottom of the screen, there's like flex memberships now too. Get yourself a ticket, kind of how many tickets you want, whenever you want. Come out to the ballpark and make sure you join us. So make sure you go to marlins.com/memberships. You can learn more, and we look forward to seeing everybody at the ballpark in 2025. So joining us now on the Miami Marlins Hot Stove Show. There he is. This is working flawlessly 2 shows in. We seemingly, Stephen, have some idea what we're doing here.
Yeah.
Bill Hezel joining us, the Miami Marlins Director of Pitching. Bill, congratulations. Welcome to the organization. This has been a fascinating trajectory for you that I'd love to discuss with you momentarily. But welcome to Miami. What has this last, I guess, month, 4 weeks, 2 weeks been like for you?
Well, first, thank you for that. And thank you for having me on. So it's been pretty wild. But this is where I wanted to be. As soon as I left Miami, kind of during the process, I knew that this was a place that I really wanted to be. I think we can build something special here, and the leadership group, I think, believes that as well. And so it's been drinking out of a fire hose a little bit these last couple weeks, but it's been great. It's been great. I'm really excited and happy to get to work.
Bill, I was chatting with Stephen before you hopped on, and we kind of agreed that we really want to, I guess, walk through your story before we get to your roles and responsibilities here, because your rise has been rather meteoric, and it's been totally unconventional, excuse me. But I guess before we dig into your new responsibilities in your role here with the Marlins, do you mind, and I could do this, but I'd rather you do it. Can you kind of share with our audience, so I guess a little bit truly who you are, where you grew up, your baseball life, and kind of how you got to where you are now, and maybe some of your stops along the way? It's amazing.
Yeah, sure. I'll try to keep it, somewhat brief, but was born in New Jersey, lived most of my life in Pennsylvania. Like everybody else, loved baseball and, played, my whole life growing up. Played in college in Pennsylvania, wasn't very good. And then after college, started having some interest in maybe coaching. Took a full-time job, but, still had some interest in trying to, find some opportunities to coach. So I really started as basically a volunteer at a small D3 junior college in Pennsylvania, Northampton Community College. Was there for a handful of years, coached a couple years at DeSales University, also in Pennsylvania. So a small D3 school. And while I was doing that, I was working in a full-time job in sales. So it was really, really tough to do both, but yeah, I really was just trying to search for a path to, make baseball my full-time job, and really fell in love with coaching, and was lucky enough that, I'd had some conversations with Kyle Bodie and some folks at Driveline, and they just cold emailed me and asked me if I'd be interested in interviewing for a job. And I did, and, ended up moving across the country. My wife and I, we sold our house. We moved across the country. I quit my sales job, was there for a handful of years, and kind of moved up pretty quick, ended up being the director of pitching there for quite some time. Had the opportunity to work with some really, really awesome people, some really fantastic athletes. And and then just had the opportunity to join Anaheim, was there for 2 years. And then this opportunity came about, and, it was certainly one I could not turn down.
Bill, Stephen Strom here. I wanted to read something that you had said. This is what you said: for someone who wanted to work hard, I always felt lost and felt like I was never close to reaching my actual true talent level. And that's the thing that pushed me to get into coaching. Do you remember when that exact moment was, and why maybe you felt like you would be a good coach and a good teacher?
Yeah, so I think it was probably, I don't know, maybe going into my final year of college baseball. I mean, I was a good high school player. I wasn't like, on the national scale or whatever, but as a pitcher, I would run it up to 87, 88 miles an hour. And so I just figured, wow, 4 more years to develop, get stronger, take my training more seriously. Like there's just, I'm definitely going to be throwing significantly harder and might get an opportunity professionally in 4 years. And yeah, I felt like I worked pretty hard. And, going into my senior year, I realized, man, I'm better. I know how to pitch more, and I have a better understanding of like the art of pitching, and I can get more hitters out. But in terms of like my raw ability, it didn't get significantly better. And I don't know, that always frustrated me. And I saw a lot of players go through that. And so I just got really interested in learning about, all right, well, like, how do we train pitchers? How do we actually make them better? Are the ways that we're going about doing it the best way to do it? Are there better ways to do it? And that kind of led me down a path of doing a lot of research, starting to discover some stuff on like the Hardball Times and Fangraphs. And yeah, just kind of led me down the path where I figured I want to try coaching.
So, if I understand that correctly, Bill, it's kind of fascinating that I guess your failures or lack of direction inherently led to your motivation to see how you can help others.
Yeah. And it wasn't I think the interesting thing too, that I always try to mention is it wasn't for lack of trying by the coaches that I had the opportunity to be around. They were great coaches, great people. I think it was just, this was quite a while ago. I'm a little younger, but I don't know, I'm pretty old. I think at that time, we just didn't have a great understanding of like, if velocity could be trained, what are the ways to do that? We didn't have a great understanding of, pitching biomechanics at that time. We certainly had a very rudimentary understanding of how pitches move. And so I think at the time, there just like wasn't a ton of resources and there wasn't a ton of knowledge out there about like how to actually upskill pitchers and make them better. And so I think I was just a product of that, but either way, it put me on a path that, I believe kind of helped me get to where I am today.
I assume they weren't doing weighted balls, like you weren't throwing weighted balls or anything like that. What was like the protocol? What were they telling you to do when you were in school?
Yeah, I mean, there was certainly like an emphasis on strength training stuff, and long toss and kind of your common, pitching training tools or whatever. But for the most part, that was the extent of things. Everyone kind of had a very similar mechanical model in terms of like how you should or shouldn't move. And there was a lot of time off. I remember, early in my college career, there was a lot of like no throw periods and times where, you're just not throwing. And, if you're an athlete that, needs to get significantly better, you maybe need to minimize some of those times and use and take advantage of them. So, it was just, a lot of your standard long toss. Here's a typical mechanical model that you should follow. If you like get bigger and stronger, then you're just going to throw harder. And for some guys that certainly works clearly. Especially if, unlike me, you have some genetic raw abilities. But yeah, it just didn't work for me. And I don't know, just made me curious and made me invest a lot of time in trying to figure out, are there other ways to train?
So Bill, when you ultimately quit your sales job and you run into this opportunity and move your wife out to Seattle, correct? Is that where Driveline is? I want to confirm that.
Yeah.
Yeah. I hate to dummy this down so much, but I have a general understanding what Driveline is, but I guess I've just heard it so much. I'm inherently just like, okay, it's just like this. It's this new age analytical way to teach people how to pitch. And truthfully, before we get to this whole new role for the Marlins with you, and before we even chat about your Angel stuff a little bit, what is Driveline and how has it shaped, I suppose, the way in which the game is being pitched today?
Yeah, I think, I don't know, at its core, it's just a training facility that believes in, maximizing the athlete's ability. And, they're going to seek out every resource, piece of tech, training methodology that is possible to achieve that goal. And I think the way it's, I don't know, something that was said to me during the interview process, actually by Kyle, and is something that I think still probably holds true and was certainly true for me is during the interview process, Kyle had told me, hey, you're going to learn more about pitching in the next 6 months. You're going to learn more about pitching in the next 6 months than you did in the last 6 years. And that certainly held true. And a lot of that is just due to the fact that, coming from a small college or whatever, you just don't have access to, some of these pieces of tech. There's just like not a robust data set that you can look at. You get exposed to kind of one segment of athletes in terms of like their skill level, and instead of, being able to work with pros, college guys, youth athletes, and kind of getting to see the full spectrum. So I don't know. It's a really special place. I truly feel like I owe that place a lot, because it not only taught me a lot about technical pitching, but it really kind of forged how I go about thinking in systems and processes. It kind of changed the way I go about my work and how I consider productivity and stuff. I don't know. It's just a really, really special place. And I think it challenged a lot of the, conventional wisdom in baseball training, and kind of set out to prove that some of those things might not be correct, or there might be better ways to go about doing some of these things.
And you were at Driveline for how many years, Bill?
4 years, I believe. Yeah.
So you go from Driveline, and then you find yourself in Anaheim at Mickey's place there with the Angels. Before I really ask you about your roles and responsibilities there, we all dream up, like when we're little in the backyard, putting on a major league uniform. And for a guy that was in Division I baseball, who took a step back and had success in Division II, you go from Driveline to the Los Angeles Angels, and you end up in a Major League Baseball uniform. What on earth was that like the first time you put on those pants and that jersey?
I mean, terrifying. Yeah, probably terrifying. Yeah, I mean, I don't know. I was just, really, really grateful that I got the opportunity. It was, I mean, I still have a hard time believing it myself, even though I did it for 2 years. But yeah, it was just, an unbelievable opportunity. Really grateful for the Angels giving me it. And Yeah, it was terrifying. It was terrifying. But I think what you learn pretty quickly, and what I learned really quickly, is at the end of the day, it's the same thing. You're working for the players. You're trying to do everything you possibly can to make the players better. And if you can get the players to believe that and understand that, and build trust with them that way, then it's the same job. You work for the players. You're doing everything you possibly can to help the players get better and win baseball games and maximize their value.
Bill, that was my next question for you, because all of these guys are hungry. They're looking to get better. But when you bring in something as, I don't want to say foreign, maybe it is some of these concepts with Driveline, how important is the trust, and how do you get them to trust you? What were some of your ways of doing that?
Yeah, I mean, building the relationship with the player is the most important thing. You can have, the best content, the best technical pitching knowledge, but if you can't get the player to understand it, if they don't trust you, if you don't have some sort of a relationship with them, if they don't believe that you're working in their best interest, then it's really hard to deliver the message. So for me, I mean, I'm obviously a little bit more, I don't know, data-driven in my thinking and the way I go about things. And so that a lot of times was my is that I think I'm really good at being able to break down highly technical pitching concepts in a very digestible way for the player to understand. More importantly, I think I do a good job explaining to them how they can weaponize that information. And then I feel good about being able to demonstrate in the data, in metrics, stats, whatever, how this is like actually going to help them. And so I think that's the way I approach it. I think over the 2 years in Anaheim, I worked really hard to also, have an in with players the other way, which is just, golfing with them, shooting the shit with them, kind of getting to know them a little bit more on a personal level. And that's really helped a ton. But I think those are kind of, how I look at things and how I build relationships with athletes.
Stephen, I guess maybe do you want to move on to the Marlins stuff? I feel like I could do this for hours because
I wanted to ask about Ohtani really quickly.
Feel free. No, feel free. But he's pretty good, I heard.
What was that like, being in the same room as him? And then you're like, all right, hey, I know you're really good. And this is no slight on you, Bill, but I never played in the majors, but I think I know what can make you better here. Was it almost like awkward at times coaching him, or is he so coachable? Just kind of give us a feel for him.
No, it wasn't awkward at all, just because I had a relationship with Shohei for the previous 2 years. So before I even joined Anaheim, I had already been already had a relationship with Shohei, and so we had already had quite a bit of trust and stuff built up. And so the transition was super easy, just because we already had that relationship. And so,
was he at Driveline before? Where did you have the relationship from?
Yep. So the 2 previous seasons we had done some work together, pretty extensively. And so we just already had a relationship. And so that made things much easier, obviously. And on top of that, as good as he is, which, I don't think it's really up for debate. He's one of the best players, if not the best player in baseball. He's just super humble. He's really, really curious. He really, really enjoys kind of getting in the weeds on some of the more technical pitching things. And so it was just, we bonded pretty quickly around that.
Okay, let's move on to now where you are here in Miami. But I even before I ask you about your roles and responsibilities, Bill, with the Marlins now, this profession is all about relationship building. Obviously, if you didn't have a relationship and develop one, you probably wouldn't have ended up at Driveline. Those relationships ultimately land you in Los Angeles with the Angels. Depending on your comfortability and what you're willing to share, whom do you have a relationship here with the Marlins? How do you feel as if this opportunity was presented to you to get to the organization?
Yeah, so honestly, the only kind of folks in the organization that I had somewhat of a close relationship with before was I knew Rachel for quite a while. She obviously was at Driveline for a little bit, so our paths crossed there, and we obviously stayed in touch, over the years. Max Garrett as well. I've worked with Max at Driveline for quite some time. In terms of like the rest of the leadership group, I really didn't have, obviously I knew of them. And when you're in the industry, you kind of, follow people and kind of have an idea of who's where and who's made changes with their leadership group and in the front office. And so I was aware of all of those things, but for the most part, those were really the only two people in kind of the leadership group that I had close relationships with. And then the other one was Brandon Mann.
Okay.
I had actually hired Brandon at Driveline. And then, obviously he left for the position with the Marlins. So those three individuals were really the only people I had, kind of close relationships with or had relationships with at all.
I must admit to you, and as an anecdote, I am so intrigued by Brandon. I try not to be intrusive. Obviously, Stephen and I are in the clubhouse daily, but I've always been kind of fascinated because, again, at its infancy, he was brought in last year to assist on that side of things. But I've always looking over his shoulder, like, what on earth is that?
Pitch shaping, I think.
Is he sending SpaceX? Is he sending something up there, or what are we doing here? Okay, so as the director of pitching, and Stephen, take it away after this. What is your roles and responsibility here? What are they as the director of pitching, Bill, for the Miami Marlins?
Yeah, so I think the things that at least the way I look at my responsibilities for the most part are, for the most part, to set the pitching vision for the entire organization, to make sure that I am implementing and creating the culture and the organizational philosophy around all things pitching, and really making sure that culture philosophy runs through the entire organization from the top down. So the things that we find are kind of like pillars of what we believe in, the kind of general culture and philosophical beliefs on the pitching side, they don't just happen on the big league side. They run all the way down the organization, all the way down to the DSL. And so I'm really trying to, create systems, build processes around that, and try as best I can to make sure that there's kind of continuity with that up and down the system.
Now, what are some of those pillars that you plan on bringing into the organization?
Yeah, it's a great question. So I think for the most part, what I think we really want to focus on is just, building the best arsenal possible for our pitchers with respect to their uniqueness. Because we want to make sure, if they have some outlier traits, some things that make them unique, we want to embrace that. We want to leverage that. We want to lean into that. But generally, we're trying to build the best arsenal possible for that player, and encourage them to be as aggressive as they possibly can inside the strike zone with that arsenal. And so I think at the core, a lot of what we're going to look to do and believe and build out is going to kind of be around that.
I'd love to start at the major league level, Bill. What excites you about some of these arms that Miami has? Because it should be exciting next year just watching these guys pitch.
Show it to him, Stephen. Yeah. Look at some of these guys, Bill. What do you like, baby?
I mean, obviously, with Sandy coming back and, Yuri getting healthy and Luzardo, I mean, we have some really, really, really exciting arms. On top of that, I do think, we added some really intriguing arms at the deadline and with some acquisitions and stuff last year. So, man, I think we have a lot of firepower in the starting rotation. I think we're going to have some really, really good arms coming out of the pen. I think we have some good depth, and I'm really, really, really excited to, see how we can progress some of the younger guys, Thomas White, Noble Meyer. I mean, we have some really, really exciting arms, in the minor leagues as well. And yeah, I mean, I'm really, really excited. Again, it's one of the things that I think drew me to this role is just that, like, obviously we have some really exciting arms in the big leagues. We've got, a returning Cy Young winner, but, what they have on the minor league side, I think is really, really interesting. There's a lot of really fun arms and a lot of guys that I can't wait to get the opportunity to work with. And I'm really excited about, putting together a pitching department that's going to upskill those guys.
Okay, I've got two questions for you, and I think they're going to go in two totally different directions. But I do want to take a step back, and something you mentioned about like building these processes and processes. When Stephen and I had an opportunity to chat with Clayton McCullough, he had mentioned, and a lot of great coaches do, that they're servants to the players. You're tasked with overseeing the entirety of the organization, Bill. But I guess my question is, when you're trying to help every single individual, because why would you not? Because you don't know where they're ultimately what they're capable of. how do you do this? Is there literally hundreds of files on a computer, and like, is there enough manpower to devote attention to every single athlete, or like, how do you prioritize like who you need to work with? I that like makes my brain explode a little bit, I guess.
Yeah, I think that's why building these systems and good processes is so important, because whether it's a director role, a coordinator role, whatever it is, it's I don't think a healthy, sustainable organization can function with someone in this type of role that sees themselves as like this super coach that just bounces around from player to player. Because the reality is you have too many players and you can't help all of them. And so I think the best way to attack that problem that you just laid out is to build really good systems, build really good processes, make sure that there's a lot of educational resources for our coaches to make sure that they are the best version that they can possibly be of themselves. And then, hopefully that allows you to improve the entire group of players at once, as opposed to one at a time. And more importantly, those systems and processes are what allow you to like truly individualize some of these things. Because at the end of the day, that's what, I don't know, every pitching department probably wants to do, right? You want, an individualized focus. And that's really hard to do at scale because you've got so many arms. And so you need really good systems, good processes. You need really great people, first and foremost, to pull all of that off. And yeah, that's what we're looking to do here. I know for sure, we have the people. That's the thing that drew me here the most, is the people.
Okay, now switching gears a little bit, because you've mentioned health on several occasions. Let me see if I can get this out in an eloquent manner. The Marlins had a rotten bout of health last year. There is a saying that you can never have too much pitching, and Lord only knows that is true after what we experienced here last season. Extremely excited to see some of these guys back. When you start to marry your vision and what you know about baseball and the processes that you want to implement, how much of this information that you are digesting and trying to give back to these players also maybe has an underlying or subliminal message? How much of this is health related too when you're giving this information to these guys, or is it not?
Oh, I mean, it certainly is. I mean, look, if you're not on the field, right, that's potentially costing us games, and is certainly costing you value and money. And so making sure that these guys are healthy and that we have a good understanding of how to properly manage their workload is really, really important. And I think we want to take a pretty holistic approach with that, meaning that, yeah, there's certainly going to be a focus in season on, how we can do a really solid job in keeping these guys healthy. And obviously a lot of that, or some of that, I should say, falls on, our high performance folks, our medical folks, and some of those areas. But I do think, providing them some education around how to maybe better structure their off season, how to properly on-ramp, just giving them some foundational knowledge on how to build up properly, how to manage their own workload, specifically in the off season, to, one, make sure they're healthy in the off season and they can execute their training. But two, they're at a point where they can report to spring training or report to camp and feel really good about doing the things we're going to ask them to do. And so, yeah, I think, health is going to be really, really important. And, we're going to certainly take some measures to make sure that, durability and availability are prioritized.
Bill, this is also, so we're kind of going everywhere, but I'm curious, just as a younger, I would consider you a pitching guru. We have Jeff Nelson in our booth, and he'll talk about, back in the day, a quality start was 8 innings, less than 2 runs, and they went out there and their arm was falling off. In 2024, what's a quality start in Bill's eyes?
Oh man, that's a good question. That's a really good question. I don't know. I mean, I think, look, it's hard to, quantify a quality start, I think, truly, just because the context is key, right? What time of year is it? How built up is the athlete? Who are we playing? What did the defense do behind them? Any number of things, can kind of impact that. I think for me, I don't know, what I would consider a quality start is probably a start that gives us the best opportunity or a opportunity to win the baseball game that's right in front of us. And so for me, if you ask me what is a quality start, it's someone going out there and giving us an opportunity to win the baseball game that day.
So it's no innings or no runs, right? It's just contextual to he gives us the best chance to win.
Yeah, I think so. I think so.
And the goalposts have probably moved on that. And I say that because I promise you I'm not as fascinated on the health of pitchers as I may seem to be, Bill. But these guys are bigger, faster, and stronger than ever before. This is, I guess, a two-part question for you. And I don't even know if it's like morbid, but like the arm is not supposed to do this at 100 miles an hour. Like there is a theory out there that every pitcher is a ticking time bomb. This stuff that you have that you can watch on video, does it tell you like how much stress is being put on a particular part of the body to try to alleviate and to assist a player that they don't end up in Dr. Elitrash's office
Dr.
undergoing
Kyle.
the next surgery? I don't know, but it's fascinating because these guys, 2025, they're all throwing 100. Everybody comes out of a bullpen throwing 103 miles an hour. Sandy Alcantara has a fresh elbow and a new lease on life. He'll be throwing 99 miles an hour 30 times this year in 200 plus innings. Like, what does this stuff tell you? What does this information tell you, Bill?
Yeah, so we get quite a bit, there's a lot of biomechanical data that we get from Hawkeye, the system that we have in the major leagues. And so, yeah, you do get, arm speeds and rotational velocities, and you get a lot of really cool and also useful stuff. I think the unfortunate reality is currently there's still quite a bit we just don't know in terms of like what's actually happening under the hood. And so I think most of the stress values and some of the things that we would get that would, maybe indicate whether or not, someone is, throwing in a more or less stressful way. A lot of that is just, quite frankly, estimates, based on, the data that we have. I think for us to get a true picture of like exactly what's going on, we probably need more, and we need to, have a better idea of what's happening under the hood. And then also just, it needs to be more specific to the individual, because the reality is, everybody's a little bit different, not just like physically with how they move, but, perhaps anatomically as well. So you have to make those considerations. But I do think with what we do get, we can implement some measures to make sure that we're doing what we can through mechanical adjustments to make sure that they're staying healthy through workload management. And so while what we get is not perfect, and I'd certainly like to have a lot more, it is plenty to make actionable changes if we want to, and to, help the player.
Interesting. Now, you're obviously more analytically inclined. My question would be, do you find yourself, obviously you need to be where your feet are and do the best you can for the organization, but do you find yourself wondering what's next in this analytical and data-driven league? Like where we're at now, 25 years down the road, the information you have now, is this the iPod of 2000? And the next thing 20 years from now, there's going to be the iPhone of baseball in this stuff? Am I too far in the weeds, Bill? You can hang up whenever, man.
No, this is great. This is great. This is what I love.
All right,
man. I think it's hard to say. I definitely think there's still definitely a lot of things about pitching and baseball in general that we maybe just like don't totally understand. Obviously in recent years, you've seen like a lot of talk about seam shifted wake or non-spin movement, and just like how the seams can play a role in how the ball moves. There's, we've learned a lot about that in the last couple of years, but there's still things we don't totally understand and that, are yet to maybe be discovered. And I think that's kind of the same thing with, biomechanics and really just everything. I think we have a pretty good idea of, what maybe gets big league hitters out. But I think there's so many ways to get to that. And those are the places where there's still a lot of gold to mine, if you will. And so, yeah, I don't know if we're at the iPod yet, or if that's the best analogy. Maybe we're just like, I don't know, maybe a better analogy is we've got the iPhone, but it's a couple versions older. So yeah, there's still a lot of stuff to figure out and stuff we don't know. And as technology gets better, cheaper, more readily available, I think we're still going to learn a lot more about pitching.
Bill, I got some quick hitters for you. Any current Marlins that you worked with at Driveline? Any pitchers? Anyone you can think of off the top of your head that had worked at Driveline with you that you're familiar with?
Not off the top of my head. I had the opportunity to work with Michael Bowman a little bit, just because he spent some time in Los Angeles this past year, and so that's probably the one that comes to mind.
Okay, and then we had talked, because obviously Peter had taken over last year, some of the individuals that got on board, and they talked about Peter's vision and how it really sold them. It really got them excited. I mean, Gabe Kapler wasn't even supposed to be in baseball last year, but a conversation with Peter had him exiting his RV that he planned on taking down to South America to Miami. What was it about Peter's pitch or Peter's vision that really got you excited and sold to come to Miami?
Yeah, so I think it was a couple things. I think one, it was just that his vision was just very clear and he was very convicted in it, as was the rest of the leadership group. And it was, I don't know, really refreshing to see that there was like a unified, aligned vision that the entire leadership group felt really strongly about, and they were able to communicate it really well. Additionally, I really was attracted to the fact that they weren't just thinking about like the short-term performance, although there was a lot of importance placed on winning right now, but there was an understanding that we want to build systems and processes to make sure that we can win for a really, really long time. And so it was refreshing to see someone that like really cared about the health and sustainability and the longevity of the organization.
You've been way too kind with your time, Bill. I do have one more question for you, and Steven, if you have a couple more, feel free, but I don't want to.
It's outside of baseball. I got one question.
Yeah.
I want to see if you pass to the Jersey guy.
Yeah. Steven asked you about if you worked with any current Marlins. Did you have a relationship with Carter Capps?
I did. Yeah, I did. Yes.
Hold on, Steven. Do you know who Carter Capps is?
I don't know.
No, he sent baseball into a tizzy about a decade ago because he'd throw like 103, but he would hop off the mound. He would probably, I don't even know why I'm bringing this up other than I was thinking Driveline and Carter Capps. That was fascinating though, wasn't it, Bill? He's out of baseball. I thought that guy was going to be in the Hall of Fame, but it just got out of control. I don't know what happened. He just disappeared and the whole thing like turned crazy, but I heard he went to Driveline.
Yeah. So went to Driveline for a little bit. I got the chance to work with him a little bit. Carter is an awesome dude, awesome human. In fact, I hired him at Driveline after he was no longer training with us. So he worked for us, interned for us for a little bit, and that kind of put him on a path to. I think he coached a little bit in the Mets organization. I think he was at Seattle U, and so
Seattle U, his alma mater, I think.
Yep. So he's been on a path to coach after that. But yeah, Carter was there. Carter's awesome. Really, really great dude. Really, really great dude, and just like. Unbelievably talented. It's a shame that just the way he moved, they just made illegal, which understandable because he was unhittable.
Crazy.
Yeah, it was unbelievable. Unbelievable. I mean, he basically leaping down the mound and then throwing 100 it was incredible. How he could pull that off is still unbelievable to me.
Yeah, I remember they stopped the game in Atlanta one time. And the umpires got together. They were like, we don't know what is going to happen in the next pitch, but you have to stop doing that. Anyway, my last question for you on a serious note to bring this full circle until Steven quizzes you on your are you a New Jerseyan or not? Now that you've been hired, what are your days looking like? Are you seeing how much money needs to be spent in X amount of places to get this whole thing off the ground? Are you literally watching video of players? What are you doing?
Yeah, so it's a little bit of everything. I mean, it's mostly been, at least early on, just trying to connect with all of our coaches, meet as many people in the organization as I possibly can. That was really important to me. It's been working with our leadership group to kind of figure out what direction we're going to go with the big league pitching coach and the big league pitching coaches. It's been certainly, watching a bunch of video, digging into some data on the current roster and, the guys we maybe have to make some decisions on. So, man, it's been a little bit of everything. It's been a little bit of everything.
What part of Jersey are you from?
I was born in Hackettstown, so it's really not that far off the border of Pennsylvania.
Pork roll or Taylor ham?
It's pork roll.
It's pork roll. What's your Wawa order?
Ooh, great question. Great question. I usually go chicken parm sub. That's my go-to.
Whoa,
Is that not dangerous
It's
there? It's a great
a
place.
little
Is that not a
gutsy,
little
yeah.
risky there?
No, it's fantastic.
Okay.
It's fantastic. It's my go-to almost every time. And quite literally, when I was in Miami, I made sure to make a pit stop at Wawa and get that exact
Wow.
order.
And
Yeah.
there's
Tasted
one like
just as
20
good?
minutes west of here, actually. I live right next to the stadium, Bill. So
Ah,
we're
oh
covered
yeah,
that way.
it's I'm very excited to get back to Wawa on a regular basis, because obviously being in Seattle, in LA, not a thing there, and haven't had the chance to make it back home a ton. So I'm excited for the Wawa experience.
And maybe the best news of the day. Hold on, Stephen. 5 miles south of where we train in Jupiter, there's a Wawa, just so you know, Bill.
Ooh,
Oh,
all
I
right,
didn't know
that's huge.
I'll try a chicken parm sub with you during spring training. That would be
Let's
very
do it.
interesting. We'll all
Let's
three
do it.
will do a
Literally
little
breaking
chicken
bread.
parm
You
review.
two will literally be
let's do
breaking
it.
bread, Stephen.
All right,
Let's do it. I'm gonna hold you guys to it in camp.
All right. Were you a Phillies guy, Yankees guy, or Mets guy growing up?
Neither actually. So I kind of got into baseball the same way I got into football, which was just kind of latching onto a player and then kind of like following that team.
Okay.
And so for me, it was Ken Griffey Jr. And so I don't know, followed the Mariners as a kid. And then oddly enough, which is hilarious, on the football side, I don't know if you can see it behind me, but I was a big Dan Marino fan. And so I've been a Dolphins fan my entire life.
Nice. Very cool.
That's amazing. Okay, Bill, I know you're going to say it's not a problem. I'm starting to feel awful how much time we've taken. So
I'm done. So now this is on Kyle.
Well.
This is on Kyle.
Hey, and I will say, as you can tell, we just asked the questions. There is very little that Stephen and I could possibly offer you after this conversation today. We will both be in Jupiter every day. We train at Roger Dean Chevrolet Stadium. 500 feet away is a beautiful golf course called Abacoa. That's the only thing I can offer you. Whenever you need a tee time, please don't hesitate to reach out. I would love to play with you. I'm on the driving range every single day. And Bill, thank you so much for joining us on the Marlins Hot Stove Show.
Thank you so much.
Thank you for having me, and I'm gonna hold you to that and the Wawa order when I see you in Jupiter.
Unbelievable. Sounds good. Take care, Bill. Thank you.
Take care, guys.
All right, that was Bill Hezel joining us on the Marlins Hot Stove Show tonight. Unbelievable conversation, Stephen. I think if I had another hour, I could keep on going, but it truly is just an amazing interview. And before we get back to that, don't forget Monster Jam is coming up January 25th and the 26th. Stephen and I actually went to Monster Jam last year. Unbelievable experience. The grave digger out there, baby, hitting the dirt at Lone Depot Park. Make sure you get out there. If you like loud noises, big trucks, it's for you, man. Go to marlins.com.
Day after my
Monster
birthday.
Jam. Right. We went last year. We had a fabulous time. Stephen was a little too nervous to get on the big wheels, get up in the seat and take her for a spin. But hey, make sure you get out there and go to Monster Jam.
That was awesome.
That was amazing. And the problem is with this deal we're doing in the off season, nobody's putting us on a time limit. So
I know.
But he was
there's no breaks.
kind.
Yeah.
Unbelievably kind with his time. A fascinating conversation. Any takeaways? Because I know we're 43 minutes deep. I hope we didn't lose anybody. I hope everybody gets a chance to watch that.
My takeaways were, this is another individual that Peter brought in, and Peter has talked about bringing in good people. That's another really good person. That is a driven person. That is someone that thinks differently, right? This isn't your old school. He's been in the bullpen for 40 years, and he's going to teach guys to get guys out. No, this is another unique, different thinking, younger individual that has a track record of success. He's worked with, obviously, some of the biggest names in baseball, Shohei Ohtani.
That was a good question. I didn't realize he had a prior relationship. That was interesting.
Yeah. I actually have a prior quote, and I was going to share it with him because he was being way too humble. This was from Patrick Sandoval in an interview, quote, and this is him talking about Bill. He knows his stuff. He knows how to translate it, which I think is the biggest quality to have, being able to translate the data to the players. He sort of dumbs it down for us because there's a lot of numbers that go into it. He knows how to filter it in and out and give it to us in a way that we need to get it. So he's got a great track record. He's got individuals really speaking highly of him, which really is what it comes down to in baseball: reputation and connections and all of that. And I think it's awesome that the Marlins have a director of pitching now too, because the Red Sox, the Tigers, the Angels, the Dodgers, not every team has it. And this is what we're talking about, investing into the organization, the money that you might not see. It might not go to these big time free agents, but it's going into these areas of development for what we talked about, sustained success. Every time we ask individuals that work for the Marlins now, what is it about Peter that drove you to this organization? And they all say the same thing: the care and the vision for long-term, not just 2024 success, for a long-term sustainable success. That was my takeaway.
Yeah. Not only is it awesome, to your point in mentioning other organizations, it's obviously a necessity. And I do think it comes back to something that we talked about on Tuesday on the show. And again, I know it's not the sexiest thing for people to hear, but there are a ton of resources being allocated behind the scenes to properly put the organization in a position to have a fighting chance to succeed moving forward. There are certain, I guess, criteria that you need to meet in today's game, and you can remove every $600 million payroll. But at its very core and infancy, if there's not the $50 to $100 million or whatever it is, Stephen, that's being spent on this type of infrastructure and these type of individuals,
you're behind.
You're done. In my opinion, you're cooked.
Totally.
And I credit Marlins principal owner Bruce Sherman. And again, I know people don't care about it, but he has invested so much of his money to give this organization a shot. And I am totally sympathetic and understanding of the fact that's all people truly care about is the MLB team. But without doing this and without taking shortcuts, this is going to put them in a position where in the next 2 to 3, 4, however many years, I'm not putting a timetable on it, but you get the gist of it. You have to do certain things and meet certain criteria to make this thing hum at the big league level. So that's really all I have on that. But I guess that's just my piece on that.
No, I totally agree. And I'm looking forward to having everyone else that is brought into the organization on here. I think it's been a really good visual, and I think it's a lot more intimate than Zoom. I don't know why. I think
I like it
to know them a little bit on a deeper level, which is great. But very pleased with our conversation and very excited to meet him and have that chicken parm sub.
I was going to say, I'm going to email him after this and hopefully we can get his number. But again, only thing that we can offer on my end, I can get him off of number one and you can take him to Wawa. Other than that, these two schleppers, we can't offer a whole lot, but we do like to join the people. Hey, I have one more conversation little point for us.
What do you got for
before we wrap things up tonight? Pretty cool. Out in the AFL, and some people really, really care about this. Others kind of turn a blind eye to it, which is fine. I mean, some people are just more interested in the minor league side of things. But Andrew Pintar, who came to the organization with Davis and De Los Santos and the AJ Puck deal, which really seemed to benefit both sides, by the way, he's been named the Defensive Player of the Year out in the AFL. Young man had a very hard time acclimating himself to the organization in AA Pensacola, but that's a nice feather in the cap for the Marlins. They sent some guys out there. Who were we supposed to chat with? He went off, and then we were supposed to
chat with Kemp Alderman.
He was great, but he got married, ended up honeymooning. I guess the honeymoon ran long, didn't go back to the AFL, whatever. He had a great start. But Andrew Pintar, that's really nice to see. I mean, obviously logged a lot of innings, and like we've discussed, they really did kind of churn over the entirety of the organization last year. A lot of really exciting young kids.
Yeah, didn't commit an error in 51 defensive chances, added 3 assists as well, and offensively collected 29 hits, which was tied for 4th in the AFL, scoring 21 runs out of that leadoff spot. It's the Marlins' 18th ranked prospect. So always good to see guys that go play in the AFL. I know that Peter Bendix and company have sent individuals to the AFL and also to the Dominican complex, where the Marlins, I guess, have just cultivated a pretty insane facility over there. You've got younger guys, the number 1 overall pick that the Marlins selected. PJ Morlando is over there. So a lot of interesting things in the offseason, but congratulations to Andrew Pintar on Defensive Player of the Year.
I'm looking at my phone here because I know we mentioned it. The Marlins had to protect certain guys from the Rule 5 draft. Speaking of Davis and De Los Santos, they selected the contract of himself.
Yep.
Jared Cerna, that was the Yankees deal, correct? I believe it was.
That was the Yankees deal.
Yeah, and then Dax Fulton, who was drafted some years back, that people are still very, very high on. I mean, I don't know if it'll ever come to fruition because he's been so injury prone, but the kid is ginormous. So those 3 players were protected from the Rule 5 draft, and the Marlins now have 40 players on the 40-man roster. A lot subject to change this offseason. But I don't know, man. We're 50 minutes in. What do you think? What do you think we should wrap this thing up a little bit?
I think we wrap up. We got a team event today. We're doing some fun stuff. We're going out to lunch. What else are we doing? Going bowling today?
I think you were bowler? Hey, Steven. No, but I think you were supposed to say we had a team event today. Remember, this is live at 6:00, right?
Yeah, you really bowled a good game today.
Yeah. But no, please note that we did this around 11 o'clock this morning, so we were not live and just interrupting anybody's day. But thank you again to Bill Hezel for joining us, Miami Marlins Director of Pitching. Just an unbelievable human being, and super, 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 super pumped to see what he does in the organization. So for Stephen Strom, I'm Kyle Sielaff. Turkey Day next Thursday. We will be with you on Wednesday. Our plan, if it goes according to plan, we will have the Miami Marlins Director of Hitting. So see you later, folks. Take it away, Stephen.